Welcome to another episode of I Run for Ultras podcast. I am super excited to introduce you to our amazing guest, Magdalena Lewy Boulet. I hope I'm saying it right. Magda is originally from Poland and now lives in Oakland, California. And she is, guys, brace yourself, she's an Olympian who's completed and won many what I would refer to as badass races. She killed it at the Western States in 2015 when she won the prestigious race on her very first try at a 100-miler in a time of 19 hours, 5 minutes and 21 seconds. That's pretty badass, I would say. In 2018, she won the Marathon Des Sables Stage race. Well, impressive to say the least, right? Magda has also has a relationship with marathons. You know, she's won the San Francisco Marathon back in 2002, came second at the Rotterdam Marathon. So, you know, and so much more. I can't even, like, if I start saying everything that she's doing, then we won't even have a podcast. So we're going to talk to Magda about her running style, the differences between marathons, ultras, and self-sufficient races, and so much more. So, guys, let's get started. Magda, welcome to I Run for Ultra.
Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be on a podcast. It's my first time.
So, Magda, tell us, first of all, very beginning, let's jump into it. You won 2018's Marathon Des Sables. So, first of all, congratulations. But tell us, what was it like competing in a race like Marathon Des Sables, and how was it different from all the other running experiences that you've had?
Well, that's it. You summed it up pretty well. It was very, very different from anything that I've ever done in my racing and running career. And it was a little scary, just, committing to it, but super, super exciting because it was something completely new and a new challenge for me. And I walked away from the race just totally fired up about just stage racing and what it takes to complete such a big adventure. And I learned that I enjoyed not just like the physical preparation for Marathon des Sables, but also the mental preparation and the logistical preparation. The race, starts way before you actually, take the first step in the first stage, and it starts, weeks prior to it, with kind of just logistically preparing yourself for everything that you will have to do in a self-supported race.
That's amazing. So, okay, you're talking about logistics here, but let's start from the very basic thing with our eyes, right? Even before we get into the physicality of it.
Right.
It's a very different terrain to run in, and what was that like? Like just a sea of sand dunes.
Right. Well, that's just it's just gorgeous, and it's very pristine. The Sahara Desert, it obviously is really hot, really hot. So, I knew that just running in extreme heat is going to be a challenge, but just, I don't think I was prepared for the beauty of the desert, and it's something that you take for granted when you're so close to to places like Arizona and Utah. But actually spending a full week and being completely isolated and just surrounded by sand and sand dunes and kind of the beauty of the desert was an experience of a lifetime. And you really, really isolated from everything, except for the almost 1,000 people that come to do this with you, and you become a pretty close family after a week of suffering and challenging yourself, for 250 kilometers and 7 days. So I loved it. I loved the sunsets that we saw every day. I loved all the stars that you could see at night, and the challenge of just like running for so many kilometers, day after day in sand. And you had to be really prepared for something, like that.
That sounds amazing. And for the viewers, just before we continue with the podcast, you will see that I've got a bit of a makeover. Don't worry about it. We'll try something new each time. But back to you, Magda. You talked about how beautiful the race was, and how you formed this family with the thousand odd people. So it sounds like a humbling experience, to say the least. However, not so humbling for you because you won. What are the key factors that you attribute to your victory?
Right. I think a lot of just being comfortable with taking on a big challenge. I feel like I'm the type of a woman that not just enjoys but also needs a big challenge, and I have the need to put myself outside of my comfort zone, and this was just, super exciting. But at the same time, just like on paper, looking at, the demand of this race was a little bit scary. But that is kind of what fueled my motivation to prepare myself for this race. And I think the preparation is key because, like I said, I really enjoyed working, for weeks towards this race, and the training was, for the most part, was very different from, anything that I've done in the past. But also, that was the part that was really exciting. I was doing something new, like spending a lot of time going to the beach and running back and forth, with a heavy pack. And preparing myself to carry everything that I needed for 7 days being in a desert. And that, when I say, like, everything that I needed, that was my sleeping bag, that was my, all the food that I was going to eat for a full week, not just your race nutrition, but everything in between that you're going to consume, it had to be in your pack. And the heat training that was part physical preparation, but also mental preparation. And that probably was the hardest part for me, just putting myself through some of the heat training protocol that I had leading up to this race. But at the end, just coping with all of it and committing yourself to this big goal, and actually getting to the starting line and thinking about, okay, here's my pack. It's about 6.5 kilos, heavy, and I am going to live off this pack for 1 week and run, about a marathon each day. Was very humbling, and I felt really prepared. And I have to say that the biggest contributor to probably my success was my tent mates. We were just such a great balanced group of competitors, anywhere from the caboose, the people that were closing up the pack, to the front and anything in between. And we just there were some people that were extremely experienced in my tent, which I drew a lot of lessons and wisdoms from them about doing a stage race. Yeah, I would have to say that my teammates were probably, one of the biggest components to, that got me through that race.
That's amazing, and you touched upon something that is, said about races like this over and over again. That while it's a competitive arena, at the same time, people are very willing to help each other out. There is a really strong sense of community, and you just talked about that. Would you say that's a very big difference from your other races, like from your Olympics and the marathons and everything? Is that, would you say it's one of the biggest differences?
Well, I mean, I feel like there's, you can build a community anywhere in any race, but this is exceptionally different because you're actually, spending pretty much every hour, for the full week with your teammates, and you definitely become, a very close family, and you rely on each other's support to get through this. So it was very different, and we definitely, not only supported each other but encouraged each other, and we helped each other out, with recovery and making sure that we got enough rest. And every day there was, at least one of us that either struggled with blisters or stomach distress, or just having people that were looking after each other was very refreshing. It's not like you show up to a race, you do your race, you hang out a little bit after the race, maybe have a beer, and then you go home. Here, you're going to sleep together in the same tent, and you're sleeping next to each other. So, whether it was someone snoring or someone waking up too many times a night, like you're in it together, and it gets pretty, it gets it's very unique, and you have to be comfortable with that. You have to be very flexible and adaptable. So you learn a lot of lessons, and how you deal with that stuff is actually what gets you, through the whole week in one piece, because little things could make you really upset if you have the wrong attitude, and could really ruin the whole experience for you. So I think that adversity and flexibility, adaptability are key components to doing stage racing, because, well, let's be honest, something will go wrong any given day, whether it's for you or someone else, or whether we had a windstorm that was pretty scary in the middle of one of our stages, and that was the first time I experienced something like that. So how you deal with it, like your attitude, and could ruin the rest of your race, right? So if you have a bad attitude about it and say, I don't want to deal with this, I don't, this was so hard in the middle of the night trying to hold on to my tent and not lose all my stuff. I've learned a great deal of some competitors lost their backpacks, lost, their gaiters, and they got up the next morning, they showed up to the starting line, and they were ready to tackle it. So I think these races really teach you life.
Oh, wow, Magda. Well, having saying you talked about the attitude, how important a role it plays. But that would also be the case with any other race, wouldn't you agree? In the sense that if you're not adaptable and if you get stuck in your head, in your ways, that would be, well, basically end up being probably as big a challenge as physical challenges when you're in a situation like this.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, having the right attitude, definitely, being positive, or even, being relentlessly positive is key to endurance racing.
I like
But
that.
it's
Relentlessly positive. I like that.
Yes, you have to. Whether in a 100-mile race, you know that you will enter some dark places and in your mind, and how you deal with it, and having tools to get out of it is critical. But it's even so much more important, when you go through a marathon running in a sand, and then you're presented with a sandstorm, and then you get up and you have to do it all over again the next morning, and there's 5 more days where you have to do it. So I think that being really determined, to get to that finish line at a stage race is key. But like you said, that translates to other endurance races as well. It's just the difference is that you have to do it day after day. After you get a little bit of rest, you get a little bit comfortable, and then it's time to do it all over again.
and your body is not wanting to cooperate at that point, right? I can imagine what it's like after like day 2 or day 3, when you wake up in the morning and you're like, I was able to move these arms and legs yesterday.
Absolutely. I definitely experienced that. There was one stage where, just in my training, I I didn't have too many like back-to-back days where I ran on sand. So here, when I went to the race, the first couple of days was great, and I got to the third day, and I started to notice that my adductors started to really work so much harder, in that mobility and stability in the sand is compromised. So you're working certain muscles a lot more than running on a road or trails. So I started to kind of pay attention to it, and I said, I'm not sure if I can do this for 3 more days. Will my adductors actually keep up with my motivation and my determination? So it's balancing that you might have the will, but you also need your body to be able to catch up and or stay with you at the same level.
And we will talk about being able to read your body and being able to connect to it, and knowing when to stop and when to carry on. So we'll talk more about that a little later. But before we get to that, I do want to talk to you because you have this unique experience where you've had experience in running many different kinds of races. So you have this obviously this unique perspective. So I want to talk to you a little more. Obviously, MDS is a self-sufficiency race, as you just mentioned, everything on your
Right.
back. But so would you say that it is like, would you say that self-sufficiency races are harder than other races where you are supported by a crew, or just with shorter race forms, or would you say that each has the same intensity of challenges, just in different ways?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily harder than. I mean, you can make each race as hard as you're willing to make it. I mean, some of my hardest races were 5Ks, and running, running 12 laps on, on the track and at certain, certain speed and keeping that intensity up for, even 15 minutes was extremely, extremely difficult. This it's just different. It's different, and it's maintaining that engagement for that long is what makes it really, really difficult. But in a way, it was very refreshing to kind of, not to have the support of your crew, to rely on yourself and be self-sufficient. It gave you special powers, because now it's really, you can't say, oh, my crew didn't show up at this aid station.
It's all you.
You, it's all you, and it was very neat. It was I definitely, highly recommend, anyone going through, whether it's, there are races, you don't have to go to the Sahara Desert, although MDS is quite the experience. There's, other races out there that might be shorter that are self-sufficient, but it's really unique. It's a big lesson, and it's very satisfying. It's what's satisfying is not just accomplishing the race, but what you learn on the way to getting to the race. I think that you're a lot more engaged in the process because you know that you can't really you can't rely on your crew. It's like, oh, they'll be there and they'll have this for me. Like every morning, before I started the stage, I would make sure that everything was in my pack. That you know for safety, to make sure that just in case something happened, that I had everything in there. But also there are rules that you have to follow, and you're just closer and more intimate with the experience that you're going through, and that was really cool.
I mean, you just talked about, you learned lessons. You're learning something new about, not only yourself but also, people around you. So, what would you say are, like some of, probably you can say, the most surprising lesson you take away from MDS? What is it that you learned from Marathon des Sables which you weren't aware of before?
Well, I think that one of the biggest lessons, kind of for me, I consider myself kind of a minimalist in terms of running and what I like to run with. So I don't like a lot of gear. I so for me, embracing the preparation of the logistics and the mandatory gear was quite the process. And when I say I embraced it, I was never in love with it. I think throughout the preparation, I would there was a lot of that. Oh, I have to carry.
Yes. Hold on, Magdalena. I think we're having some technical difficulties. For some reason, your call has frozen. So I'm just gonna disconnect and call you back if that's okay. Okay, so guys, we are having a bit of a technical snafu. Magdalena's screen got frozen, so we're just gonna call her back. Let's see. Let's see if this works. Hello. Let's see if it's working. Magdalena. For some reason, it was being all glitchy, and it still is. Um, how do we solve this problem? So anyway, Magda, we're gonna try to have you continue to talk till we figure the video part out because this is important. But the only thing I'm concerned about is it's probably not reading your audio as well because it's completely disconnected. How unfortunate! Right in the middle of this. Okay, so I can hear you fantastically. The only thing is the studio software is not reading your audio or video. So I'm a little concerned about this. Uh, so so audio only. So guys, we are talking to Magdalena, and for some reason we are not being able to see her Skype. It just disappeared right in the middle of it, and we can't quite figure out what's going on here. So so okay, guys, we are back online. We just restarted everything, so we will get right back into it with Magda.
Yeah,
Magda, thank you so much for being understanding with
yeah,
technology as
absolutely.
things are weird things happening. So, what were we talking about last?
We're talking about the lessons. We're
Yes.
talking about the lessons I
Tell tell the
took
viewers
away.
tell the viewers about the lessons because I feel like they would want your full answer.
So yeah, as I mentioned before, just one of the lessons is just about myself. I learned just that I can embrace some of the stuff that I might not particularly enjoy, or what I thought I didn't, enjoy, to actually embrace it throughout the training. And I really, saw the benefits of it during the race. So embracing that mandatory gear was was difficult for me at first, but how critical that was in the race itself put a smile on my face and said, "Good job for sticking with it and actually enjoying it." But some other simple things that I've learned about myself is that, well, I can get by for a week in the middle of nowhere with very little, and that's a good life lesson. It's good confidence. So having a small pack and some a tent that that was really simple, and some rocks and sticks was enough to get by, and some, well, a good amount of water definitely
Of
helps.
course.
Um, but I think the most critical thing was that in the face of adversity, I can stay calm, and I think that is something that I continue to seek through endurance racing, because I think it's so important in life to have that quality, because nothing goes ever perfectly, or most of the time, and stuff happens in life, and being able to stay calm and deal with it in the right way is a great lesson. And I think I get that from some of the challenges that I put myself through, that I voluntarily sign up for. And at the end, just making new friends in the Sahara Desert was I definitely am the type of a person that feels really comfortable around people, and I make new friends easily, and that was a lot of fun. And to do that again in the Sahara Desert in Morocco was quite the experience. I love to travel and see new places, so that kind of keeps me,
Keeps your fuel going, keeps you
yeah, it
fueled.
keeps my fuel, and it allows me to dream about the next adventure.
Amazing. And we're definitely going to talk about your next adventures a little later. But first, moving on from Marathon des Sables, let's talk about. It's been a few years, but you had quite an epic win at the Western States. Not many people, even some amazing athletes have stumbled along that. What was that like? And were you expecting to win going into it?
Oh, I never expect it. I dream about it, but I don't expect it. I think that going into your first 100 miler, it's like going into your first marathon. You're so clueless. you know, People tell you, what you need to pay attention to, what to watch out for, what not to do, what to do, and I had ton of advice from my community, and I felt like I was really well prepared. But you're never, you never know until you do it. What are you getting yourself into? And I love that experience of like the first time, whether it's 100 miles or a marathon. It's it will always remain in your heart as like the first, right?
Yes.
uh, and for me I definitely stumbled. I went off course. I was that was a good test for me in that race, where at mile 30, I went about a mile off course and freaked out for a second or two, or maybe a couple minutes, or maybe a little bit longer. And then just trying to regroup, and be positive, tell yourself that that was okay, that it's a long race, that it's so early, was definitely kind of that moment where I started to question whether I was able to still go for the win. um, and for me to in a 100-mile race was the first time where where I was really able to apply all of the nutrition knowledge and hydration that was going to, to be important in a race like Western States, where going through the canyons is over 100 degrees, and managing both your nutrition and your hydration and pacing was,
It's a very
yeah,
different ball game.
it is, yeah. It's and that, that course is brutal. It can be brutal, and it's always competitive, and there's a lot going on at any given time. But yeah, just I keep going back to that day, and how for the most part everything aligned for me, and except for going off the course, I felt really good all day long, and I felt like I did such a good job managing the heat, which was a very, very critical.
Brutal, yeah.
It,
That's
it,
pretty brutal
right.
heat.
Yeah, and it's you're again, if you misjudge how hard you're working in that heat, there's so much that can go wrong, with going too fast and just burning your matches to really,
Losing salt.
just disturbing nutrition and how much you can take in, which in a 100-mile race, if you can't take in your nutrition, at the end you're going to pay for it. So just balancing all of it, I felt like I did a pretty good job in the first time 100-mile race, and it was amazing getting to that finish line. And I most of the time I just worried about my son, because he was going to stay up and watch the race, and I said, he's never been up for that long, so I better get to the finish line as quick as I can, because he might not be awake. I
So
just
you
can't.
won because you were motivated for yourself. A motivated mother crossing
Yeah,
the.
totally. Yes. And, honestly, like seeing him at the finish, and seeing like him, be so happy for me to get to the finish line. And, most people didn't really see the after, but he crushed so hard, like an hour after I finished. Like he started to get a little bit irrational and started to lose his mind. I'm like, okay, we got to put him to bed.
Well, you may be able to switch off a lot of things while running and being an athlete, but you can never switch off being a parent.
No,
That's
no,
that's a given.
that's That's so true. Right. You worry about the, silly things. Is he wearing the right stuff? Does he have the right shoes on? Yeah, little things. Is he eating? Is he snacking? I don't want him to be hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It makes the 100 miles go by quick when you're occupied by little things in life.
thoughts, yes. So I mean, you talked about your son. So let's talk about your personal life versus training and for races. Obviously, it takes up a lot of your time. How do you work the balance out?
Yeah.
How do you make sure that each aspect of your life is fulfilled?
Right. Oh, that's such a hard question. And from the outside, I always get, I get this is like the number one question that people ask me, like, how do you do it? You do it all. You work full time. Right now, I'm at work during my lunch break, doing a podcast. But and you have it figured out. I don't have it figured out. Let's be honest. I don't have it figured out. There are times where I really struggle. That obviously I want to be just this amazing role model for my son. So I keep telling myself that anytime I commit myself to a big goal, and he can witness, a strong female, working towards a big goal, this is a great example, and I'm teaching him lessons. And I think that I keep telling myself that. So there will be times where, he wakes up and I'm not there for breakfast because I'm out training. But I think I've done a really good job just being creative with my training over the years. I don't believe that there is one way of getting, from point A to point B. There are many ways that you can make this work, and it can fit your lifestyle. I often commute to work by running, so I gain a lot of time back in my life, and that's the time that I choose to spend and have breakfast with my son before he goes to school. So I get creative, and being an ultra runner, the training really fits my lifestyle. I often, will finish a long run and then go hike with my son as part of my time on my feet. And I have to hike as part of my training, but I'm also spending time with him. So I think creativity is what allows me to do this, and not feel like, I'm compromising. Although, in reality, there's always a compromise that you have to make. Going to sleep at 9:30 is to most people that might be a compromise, where I'm like, I need to get my sleep. This is important for my training. So, and my recovery, I need to get up early. So you're always making compromises, but I don't feel like I'm missing out on stuff. I'm working towards that, towards something that at the end is very fulfilling for me and has a meaning.
And you're leaving a legacy too. I mean, for, like you said, you're a role model for your son. So for him to be able to see you juggle so many balls and still be an involved parent is huge.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I mean, you hope you're doing the right thing, and I definitely enjoy it, and sometimes I get jealous, of other parents that they can be there at every school event, and I definitely don't participate in as many events at schools, but I try to be there for my son as much as as much as he needs me.
You talked about how important it is for you that your son sees a strong woman as a role model, and luckily enough, this most sports have been dominated by men. It's a man's world for the most part, but that's seems to be changing right now, because we have some really amazing women athletes who are making big strides and big changes for the for let's just talk about ultra marathons, because otherwise we'll get let's talk about running, because that's we'll go so off topic, because there are women doing amazing things across the board, but especially in this sport too. Talk to me about what's your take on it, and also from the time that you started running, let's not just ultra, from the days when you started running to now, what kind of a difference have you seen, and are you inspired by what's going on?
Absolutely. So for me, back in 2004 is, I didn't make the Olympic team in the marathon, and it was a big kind of, shift in my mind. Do I just retire as a runner, and just move on and start a family? Do I, just go back to work full time? Like, what do I do? And, I made, that was back in 2004. So that was quite, exactly 14 years ago, because my son is 13. That was kind of that struggle in my heart, and like what to do. And I made a commitment that, I can do both. I can continue to train, and I can continue to race and still be a mom. And obviously, having a supportive partner in your life is critical. Like, maybe if I were a single mom, that would have been another level of difficulty. But I'm not, and I've been very, very lucky to have a partner in my life that says, this is really important for you to do. You love this. You better for it. You're better at home. You're better as a parent. And seeing that was extremely motivating. And I continue to work on my career. I continue to work my running career as well, my professional, and being a mom. And now seeing other women that continue to not to give up their professional careers to be a parent is extremely important to continue to do. And there are more women that are sticking with it, and it's not easy to do it all. It goes back to that balance that anytime you have more balls to juggle, It's a lot more. It's sometimes exhausting. It's but it is fulfilling. And again, finding that partner in your life that you can do this with is so much more fun because you can always, rely on them to be there, when you can't handle everything. And I think for me, my husband has been just a rock in my, in this process, and it's so much more fun to do it with him along the way than for me to do it by myself.
That's amazing. It's nice that you have a support system, and that you have people who who are behind you,
Right.
who help
Yeah.
you do basically chase your dream pretty much.
Yeah. Well, it again, it's what I've learned over the years that you have to build that support system for support team for yourself, and whether this is your partner at home, whether this is your local running store, whether it's your training partners, whether it's your massage therapist or PT or your sponsors, those are the people that are invested in your dreams, and you work as a team. And I've been very fortunate to have great partners that I've been for years. And yeah, I just you can definitely you can do it by yourself and struggle, or you can build that team and just really enjoy the process. And I think I've been very fortunate, I have to say I've been very fortunate to have a team that is extremely invested in my journey, and I get to share that with them. It wouldn't be as much fun if I had to share this just by myself. And with myself.
That's really wonderful and inspiring. And Magda, I want to know a little more about when you started, because you obviously have this awesome team that you've team of people, your people who are around you, who support your journey. But when you first started, like, I want to know, when did you first get involved with the sport of running, and what drew you into it?
Right. I definitely, started, maybe, if you think about, cross country and track and field and road racing, I started a little bit late. I was a senior in high school, and, I purely, started running because it was social. Because I could actually spend time with friends or make new friends when I moved to United States. I grew up in Poland, and I was a swimmer growing up. So it's a lot more difficult to make friends when your face is in the water, and
And you said that you're a
and yeah,
social person, you like making
yeah,
friends.
yeah. I definitely enjoy people, and I like spending time with people. And running was a perfect social platform for me to meet new friends, to learn a new language, to make friends at school. So that's what drew me to it. But I remember, going on my first run ever with a friend, where someone convinced me to come out and go for like a real run. And I kind of resisted for a little bit, but I'm like, yeah, what the heck, give it a try. You actually can make friends when you run. But I remember that first run was where, deep in my, in your heart, you're like, wow, I think I found something that I love. I'm not sure if I'm good at it or not, but this is like really cool. Like the feeling of, just wanting to continue, wanting to get better, and starting to see myself actually doing something like this, every day was just, awakening to me, like, okay, it's never too late to find your passion. And for me,
Do
that
you have an
was
athletic family, Magda?
both. Yes and no. I mean, my family. There's always someone in the family that participated in sports, whether it was soccer. My mom, when she was in school, she definitely did like sprints. My dad was more into swimming, but never like post high school level. Um, so I definitely I keep trying to figure out where that came from for me, because it wasn't until I started to get into athletics seriously that my mom said, "Oh, by the way, I also ran in high school." I'm like, "You did? You didn't really tell me."
Wow. So would you say that you would attribute some of it to genetics? But what would your ratio be? How much do you think do you
Yeah.
attribute to genetics, and how much to your training and the work you've put in?
Oh, I think that, I definitely have a talent for hard work. I don't think I'm more talented than the next person that, I run next to. I really, attribute running to just being determined and continuing to learn the process. When I first started in high school, I don't think that, any college coach would have put, any money on me to come and bring him on a team. But I was pretty determined to learn, and I quickly figured out that, with running is, you just need to stay consistent. And later in college, I learned that you just also need to stay healthy in order to be consistent. So and then I also had really, really great mentors in my life. One of my, all-time coaches that I spent 12 years training with is Jack Daniels, who spent, a decade coaching me, and Jack became, more of a life mentor than a running coach after a decade. And I've just learned to love running and love training over him, and how important it was to love the sport. And I think that alone just got me, to where I am today, where, I respect, I learned from Jack to respect rest and recovery, and just a pure joy for the process in
The
running.
importance of running smart, not just going for it.
Right, yeah. You're not taking shortcuts just to get fast, because you can get really fit by taking a lot of risk. Where I learned from Jack Daniels to invest in longevity in the sport. And he's someone who's in his 80s approaching 90, and him and I can go for a short run together. So that alone is like a huge inspiration to me. Like the fact that I can go for a run, whether it's a 2 mile run with someone who's 90 years old, and has really taught me to be to 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 find consistency as something that's important. And again, really appreciate our community and our sport.
That's amazing, Magda, that you've been able to take you have your training evolve, and also you've talked about nutrition earlier. I'm sure that's also been something that's evolved and changed over the years, and I'm sure it changes
Right.
depending on the kind of
Right.
race. But tell us a little about your nutrition and training philosophy. Some of what I know, he said consistency. So what are some of the things that you have learned working with Jack that was different from before you started?
Right. So, I mean, in training, I've learned to allow my body to adapt to whatever I do. So, my progression, I'm being very patient with my progression, whether it's my mileage. For years, my eyes were always really big, and I would try to negotiate with Jack to do more mileage. And he's like, well, that's not, it's great that you want to run more, but, there is a lot more to being a good runner than just running more miles. So,
So it's
just again,
quality, not quantity necessarily.
yeah. And then again, just I can't emphasize, the rest in between all the quality that you're doing. So, um,
And
having,
obviously
yeah.
injury has been a part of
Oh,
your life, just like it has
no.
any other athlete. So would you say that when you take the tips that he's given you over a period of time, especially with things like recovery and rest, you have seen a change in injury?
Definitely. I think being an athlete, you're always trying to push that envelope, right? You're always trying to see if I can in order to get better, to improve from year to year. You have to apply new stress. You have to allow your body to adapt to it. So I definitely, when I first, started with Jack, I had a really difficult time, taking a day off, or when something started to creep up in terms of injury, to just back off and let the body heal. And one of the lessons that I learned from Jack is like, well, you can take a day off, or you can take 2 days off, or not listen to your body, and then you will have to take a month off. And just sitting on that sideline for a month is not as much fun as taking a couple days off. So just I've learned to like listen to my body. Sometimes I found myself going through a process, and just my aerobic ability, I would get to the point where I was extremely fit, but then mechanical muscles or being sore are not quite at the same level. And that's when you get in trouble, right? You push through stuff because you're fit, but not necessarily
Optimal
your muscle.
performance versus fit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or your body is just needs more time to recover. So if you ask me 10 years ago, do I take a day off, I'll be like, no. But now I'm like, yes, I take a day off when something is not right, or I plan in my schedule where there is a planned day off. And I'm more confident doing that now than I was 10 years ago. And then when it comes to nutrition, like I definitely have evolved over time. And I love to cook, so I'm a big proponent for eating whole foods all the time, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, making sure that your nutrition, your what you consume, is as wholesome as possible, plant based, as many fruits and vegetables in your diet, and making sure that your nutrition as an athlete supports your training. So it needs to depending on what you're training for, whether you're training for a 5K versus an ultra, your nutrition needs should not be the same. They need to support the workload that you are putting your body through. And that's kind of that is for some people, that's really difficult, because they want to follow a certain diet, or certain lifestyle with food. But the question I always say, just like in training, is your nutrition supporting the workload that you put in your body through? Because that is going to contribute to consistency as well. If you're supporting your body with the nutrients that it needs, your body will stay healthy. Therefore, it will contribute to that consistency and prevent injuries. So, luckily, I love food, and I love being creative in the kitchen, and I love cooking. It's not a chore for me. And I definitely, from an early age, when my son was born, I made a mission of making sure that he's exposed to all of the great vegetables and fruits, and that he had a palate that that is going to set him up for future success with
A healthy
eating
life.
a healthy lifestyle. Yeah.
And so, Magda, it's interesting that, the interesting thing that you mentioned is, from attitude to training to nutrition, the key word seems to be adaptability. You cannot be rigid, and you have to be flexible and fluid depending on what the needs are and how to make the best of the situation. So adaptability is a key word so
Yeah.
far. That's amazing. But
Yeah.
moving on from all the amazing pearls of wisdom that you've given us, let's get a crystal ball and look into the future. It's just 2019 has just started, but
Right.
but first of all, tell us what do you think, because marathons have been around for a while, the Olympics have been around for even longer probably,
Right.
but the sport of ultra marathons, it's a new sport relatively. Where do you, in your crystal ball, where do you see the sport heading, and do you like the direction it's going in?
Right. I think that there are a few things that excite me, but also worry me. I think that what's really exciting is that there's so many opportunities for for distance runners, to go beyond the marathon distance, to explore just some of the most amazing trails in the world, where we now have races that are offering for us to participate in. And that really excites me, because to me, the fact that I'm capable of traveling and visiting, the planet with my 2 feet, and I can do this by running races. It just, just the the sky's the limit, right? Like you can just look at I do this frequently, where I look at the world map. I'm like, where do I want to go?
And
And
also, it's
yeah.
exploring the world in a way that not that many people do anymore.
Right, exactly. And it's, for the most part, through, ultra running, you seeing the parts of, the world that are still very, pristine and untouched, that, they're not, I'm not walking around as a tourist and visiting gift shops. And that's, to me, that's really, really appealing, that I get to be in nature, and at the same time, I get to suffer a little bit and learn something about it, and get closer with the people that are suffering with me. So all of it is great, and I think that we do need to protect a lot of these places. So
So would you
it's
say that's the
that's
conservation is one of the
yeah.
things that worries you the most?
It does worry me, because there is certain places where where races don't belong. So that's one thing, but also taking on those challenges requires responsibility. And when I say, for anyone who, you can't just say, I'm going to do this 100-mile race, or this 200-mile race, or this stage race, and just show up and do it. And it's important that people invest in the preparation, because you don't want to hurt yourself. You don't want to get yourself in trouble. You want to make sure you have the right gear. You want to make sure that when you show up to somewhere in Patagonia, and it's going to to change. You're in the mountains, the weather can change, and if you don't have the right gear, if you're not prepared for it physically and mentally, that can cost you your life.
Yes.
Or
So to be
or you can.
responsible and
To be
respectful.
Absolutely. So those are the two things. It's a fine balance, right?
It is.
We want to respect our planet. We want to explore, but we want to be respectful. But we also need to respect, ourselves, and protect ourselves. And if you want to do this for a long time, and that's kind of my goal in life, is like, I want to be like Jack Daniels. I want to be 90 years old. I want to be running, uh, and and in order for me to do that, I need to invest in my body. I need to invest in the time that it takes to properly prepare myself for any event, but also, again, like you said, protection and being responsible.
Amazing. So we still have that crystal ball that we're looking into the future, Magda. So
Yeah.
let's keep looking at that ball and tell us, what are your plans for 2019?
That's always such a difficult. I feel like anytime you set a race schedule, there's something that you're missing out on, right?
True.
So I do struggle with the fact that I've made my goal and mission to explore different races, um, which means that I don't come back to the same race over and over again, and that's been a struggle for me, because you like, I fell in love with Western States. I want to go back, but if I do Western States, I cannot do something else.
Yes.
So so this year, I'm actually starting with my first race in Hong Kong. Just in a couple of weeks, I'll be heading out to Hong Kong and doing a 2-day race. So it's called 50-50. Nine Dragons is the official name of the race. And you run 50 miles on day one, and then you got to get up and do a 50K the next day.
Amazing.
So it's not quite, like self-supported stage race. So I'm assuming that the intensity is higher, and it's going to be a fine balance of, making sure that you can pace yourself well, so you can get up the next morning and do a 50K. Um, some other big goals this summer, I would like to do Leadville.
Amazing.
And I'm throwing in a little marathon on the road
That was going
later.
to be my next question. Do you see yourself continuing to, do marathons as well as all these ultras and stage races?
Absolutely. I think that for me is, if you ask me 3 years ago, do I want to do a road marathon? I would have been like, it's not really that big of a challenge right now. But after 4 years of doing ultras and doing some really, really long races and, doing a lot of vertical, suddenly like doing a faster marathon started to sound like a challenge. So it's like a full cycle. Now it is a challenge.
Yes.
So I want to do it.
Amazing. So, any New Year's resolutions not to do with running? Anything that 2019 you feel you need to work on?
I do. It has nothing, yeah, it has nothing to do with running. My goal this year is to pick up 5 pieces of trash every day
Oh, that
from the
that is
from the trails or
amazing.
roads or just when I walk around.
Th-
Um,
I wish
so yeah,
everybody did that, because if everybody did that, we wouldn't have this much littering. I do the same thing when I go for every time I walk my dog or go for a
yeah.
bicycle run, I try to make it a point to stop and pick something up.
It, I do too. And where I struggle is, do I do I interrupt my run by picking up all the trash all the time? Well, not that I run in areas that are trails that are really trash, but there last run I went to with a friend of mine, she ran for 6 miles with a bike fender with just a plastic piece, and then I ran with like 5 pieces of trash in my hand, and we're like, okay, this is gonna get kind of old really quickly. Us just like picking up trash all the time. So yeah, I try to balance it, like when I walk my dog, when I just go for sometimes I do outside meetings with my team, and I figured I'll just have everyone pick up some trash along the way.
Yes, get other people involved as well. Well,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
really wonderful resolution. That's Magda. I just made that my resolution as well. Thank you for
Yes.
for
Yes.
inspiring me with that. But
Thank you.
any final thoughts, Magda? Any final thoughts for the people listening to us?
No, just enjoy the process. We're so fortunate to be able to, as runners, to be out there. And I think just every day, when I say like, oh, I don't want to get up at, there's a 5 on my alarm clock. I don't want to see it. It's dark. It's rainy. By the time I finish, it always feels so much better to get out the door. So just enjoy the process. We're very lucky.
Well, thank you, Magda, and we wish you the very best. May you have an amazing 2019,
Thank
and
you.
I Run for Ultra will be there following your running. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank
Cheers.
you.
Bye.